There you go, sweetheart. Play with the hairbrush. Righty-o. So, welcome back to a new year, new me, new you. And we have, well, actually, to be fair, we're the same old, same old. But you know what? Let's go with new year, new us. So welcome. We have a jam-packed session today. We are pretty much going over the Wave 1 release notes. So, starting us off, we have Brent, who's going to cover off supply chain. We have Mizelle, who's going to cover off finance. Kayla's going to cover off the cross apps. And then we have our special new speaker, Steve, who is going to cover off Business Central. We'll then finish off, as we usually do, with the form socials and what is going on next month. So, Brent, welcome. You're a new speaker to us as well.
I are.
Not a new speaker generally, but for us, it's your debut.
It is. Yes, I will try and not disappoint.
Oh, never, never, never. So you should have presentation rights now.
You should see my. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, I can.
Okay.
Lovely.
Excellent. Perfect. Well, hi everybody. Welcome to the new year. As was mentioned, my name is Brent Dawson. As you can see from my slide deck, I work for DXC Technology. I am a pre-sales architect for the F&O platform and a little bit of Power Platform, but mostly F&O. And I am here today to talk to you about what is in the SCM 2022 Wave 1 releases. So a lot of these sort of came out late last year, but have now become general availability late December and into this year. So we're going to take a look at the major items that are going to be part of the new releases. These are the major topics that they've broken the releases into. So whoops, look into distributed hybrid topologies. Looking at this is sort of the biggest change to the environment that they've created. Then we'll take a look at some of the inventory and logistics modifications, manufacturing updates, planning, and then lastly some items for product information management. So the idea of a distributed topology sort of has been around for a little while. When AX 2012 was around, everything was on site, and then as AX 7 and then ultimately D365 rolled out, there was the idea of the hybrid implementation, mostly on the retail side, where you would have basically an offline copy database on a local server that if your internet connection went offline, you could still have your store function. You would just record all of your sales and your transactions locally, and then when you had access to the internet, you would replicate them back up to the cloud, and then it would be stored centrally. Well, they've taken that idea and they've added on to it with using some of the manufacturing capabilities. So under the idea of the edge, we've now created this idea of edge scale units. And this basically is so you can enable running of vertical functional workloads in the facility, and it will increase the resiliency of your supply chain, specifically around manufacturing and warehouse execution. So you can run all of the same workloads that you would do normally in your cloud, but in what's referred to as the edge, which would be your local operating infrastructure at your local center. So there is a out-of-the-box workloads for all of these scale units. And basically what it does is it represents, in the distributed hybrid topology, all of the functions of the supply chain management module. So they run on-premise, the hardware is located locally. It helps to build up resiliency that way because you have all of your critical operations running and executing locally. And then, in the scenario where for some reason the edge gets disconnected from the internet and you lose access to the cloud, all of those workloads are still executed locally. And the direct integration with other local systems without connecting to the cloud is there. So you can access, as an example, a TMS system or other types of things, MES systems and whatever. But you still have the capability of executing against those processes. So they've broken it out into two different functions for this part of the tool. The first one is manufacturing execution. So one of the downsides of running an entire manufacturing process cloud only is, of course, if you lose access to the internet. If you lose access to the internet, you lose access to MES functionality, you lose access to mixed reality information, you lose access to the mobile application tool. So there's a lot of different things that don't want to work when you're running the execution completely cloud-based. So by going to using this hybrid topology, we've enhanced the manufacturing workloads to include these scale units that will work locally. And again, we will replicate all of the information, all of the infrastructure on a local environment. And so when we're doing the execution components of the manufacturing process, those execution steps are run locally on the in the local area. So through scale units, through edge connections, and so forth. So all your raw material picking, which includes the consumption of the materials, the execution of the actual production, including the production start, and then all of the finished put-aways for the goods that you've completed are all done in this local scaled-out version of the cloud-based infrastructure. Then, when it's done, the finalized component, which is approving time registrations and sort of all of the stuff that you do when you finish a manufacturing process, those are all done again in the cloud. So by doing this, we've restricted or removed rather the ability to be shut down at any given time if the internet just decides to go off or Microsoft goes down or whatever it happens to be. We can still function properly and keep the business going. Same concept works for warehouse execution. So when we're doing warehouse execution, again, all of the workload that is doing the majority of the work, i.e. the wave work and processing and the shipping and packing and all that sort of thing, is all done locally in the edge on your scale unit. And then when it's finished and you generate all of your packing slips and you need to do your postings and whatever, then that gets replicated back up into the cloud. And again, same concept. The major part of the work that gets completed is done during the located locally on the scale unit on the edge, and then it will get replicated up into the cloud. So this is actually going to save a lot of organizations a lot of downtime because of the fact that the data is all run locally, and all of that information then will get rolled up once the execution of those work processes are completed. And I've actually seen this the wave picking part in the process here. We have one client who's actually tried this in their pre-environments, and it seems to be working quite well. So they actually shut the internet connection off to that system, and everything just completely worked the way it was. The only issue that we ran into was the mobile app sometimes was having a little bit of issue because, of course, it's looking for the cloud address. But there is a configuration in the cloud app or in the mobile app to make sure it's pointing to the right scale unit, and once they got that resolved, it seemed to be working pretty well. So as I said, those are the sort of the two biggies that Microsoft has thrown at everybody for the supply chain side, and it kind of affects both the warehouse and the manufacturing pieces. But there's a whole bunch more. So under the inventory and logistics heading that Microsoft has published, these are all of the major updates. And what I'll do is I'll just touch on each one of these and kind of give you the high level of what each one is. I don't want to get too deep into the weeds with all of them. The first one is calling post on-hand adjustments using codes connected to offset accounts. So what has happened in previous times is it was always difficult to publish balances and on-hand adjustments to proper accounts. And so what this does is it adds some efficiencies as well as some speed, as well as clear documentation so that the inventory adjustment process in the warehouse and retail stores is easier to complete. And then once you've done and selected reasons for adjustments after you've gone and did an on-hand inventory adjustment, the system will be able to automatically post those adjustments to whatever the appropriate offset accounts are based on that stated reason. So you'll have all of these different account types set up, and the system will automatically do that for you. The next one is sales quotations referenced during reference data export policies. And really what this was is it was just a way to increment exports of sales quotations more quickly. Sometimes you get the sales quotation and the data wasn't always available and it would take a bit long to run. And so this is just a way to kind of speed some of those processes up. When we're looking at updates in terms of the base features, Under cost management, there's some comparing things for like price storage for item inventory storages, average for fallbacks for cost sequences, as well as creating inventory management for things like creating transfer orders from sales, enabling inventory quality management, auto incrementing line numbers, and just sort of basic administrative stuff. A lot of these are bug fixes and patches that had exist in previous versions. And these are things that just kind of needed to be cleaned up a little bit and added out. The next one is the warehouse management mobile app. So they have a new released version of that it came out sometime around the middle to end of October, and it's taking all of the function and features that was in the previous version. They've modified the interface slightly. They've cleaned it up a little bit, and basically the big change in the tool is the ability for temporary workers to be able to learn how to do their job better and have a better worker experience. So even though the one previous to this was a much better tool than the sort of black and white version that was on the previous versions, because these all run Android or iOS or Windows, it was very difficult for temporary users to kind of get used to the system. And there's a bit more coaching that's available in it now, so you can actually have step throughs, and so people can actually figure out how the tool works. So that makes it a little bit easier for them. Next, we have the idea of soft reservations. So when we're doing a purchase order or a sales order, one of the things that often happens is that it generates a reservation for inventory, and you can either set it to be automatic or manual. And so one of the things that is difficult is that there's several steps that you have to go through to actually get and find out if you have on-hand inventory in places and where it needs to be, and where you're going to pull from warehouses and that sort of thing. And really what the purpose of this update is to enable order management and point of sale systems to communicate directly with the supply chain management module, find and temporarily reserve any requested inventory, and then make sure that the inventory can be delivered as promised by the salesperson. And so really this is just an add-in to allow for that visibility from the sales side of things. The next one is sealed bidding. This is basically just for procurement processes and practices to implement sealed bidding on when you're doing RFQs. Submitted, all of the details are done and encrypted until the bidding period expires. So nobody can actually open up and go take a look at a bid prior to the process closing. It's just a way to make sure that everything is fair and sound within the bidding process within your organization. Couple other things: deduction and catch weight enhancements. So, as we're doing manufacturing and we're changing things, it might be through a rebate, or it might be through a loyalty program, or whatever, where we have items that we would get deductions for, based on the number of sales, or if there's a specific weight that if they purchase, they would get a discount on, like if they're buying bulk materials like cement or sand or stuff like that. Then they would get rebates. And so there's just some fixes for the rebate management pieces of that. The next part is work breaks and tracking updates for landed cost. So landed cost got separated into its own module sometime in the middle of last year. And really what it's doing is it made it a bit easier to manage all of the costs around shipping and receiving, and it was taken out of the transportation module. And so the updates that they did to this one is to automatically update all of the estimated to actual arrival dates of imported goods based on put away records in the system. So if you make a purchase request from a vendor and they say it's going to be on a boat from China to North America, and it's going to take 21 days or whatever, you can take and track those updates within the landed cost modules to make sure that the values that they said that they were going to be shipping on and the dates and stuff are actually matched. And if they're not, then you can keep those updated quite easily. The next one is pausing tasks in the warehouse management tab. So as an example, let's say that you forget to go and do a count before you go and do a pick in the warehouse. And so you go over to where the bin is, and it's got, it's 15 short of what you need to pick. And so what this will do is that instead of stopping and not being able to continue on and do the next pick or whatever in the warehouse, the warehouse app will now allow you to basically pause and stop their current task and go to a different one and continue from that point. So as an example, let's say that, you're in the middle of a pick and there's an emergency order that has to happen. So, you could basically pause that current pick, go do the one that's more important, and then come back to it after the fact. You don't have to stop it and break out and try and start all over again. So that will make efficiency in the warehouse much better. The next one is scanning barcodes in the warehouse. So the GS1 format standard. This is going to be in public preview. Actually, it is in public preview. The general availability hasn't been announced yet, but it probably will be later summer or probably the fall release of the updates. And basically what this is for is to just simplify and update the scanning processes in the warehouses for any pallets or containers that have a GS1 barcode. And so the GS1 barcode will have all of the information needed, and you'll only need to do one single scan and populate all of the information. So instead of having to do multiple scans or input manual information, one scan will reduce all of the time it takes to do that, because it's going to have all the information in the scan. It will populate all of the fields correctly. So this one they're still working on, as I say. It's in public preview now, but there's no date for it to be actually generally available. And then lastly is global inventory accounting. And so what this is going to do is let you account inventory in multiple representations by applying appropriate valuation standards, so standard cost, average cost, specific identification of products, and the selected accounting currency per instance. And so what this is going to do is that it's going to let you define global inventory accounting ledgers based on calendar, currency, exchange rate, and convention. And it's currently available in the United States, Europe, United Kingdom, Australia, and Canada. And eventually it will get rolled out to the rest of the world. Global inventory licensing, because of course everybody loves the licensing discussion, is licensed together with the standard cost management features for supply chain. So you don't have to do any other additional licensing for global inventory accounting, which I'm sure a lot of businesses will be pleased with. The next section is manufacturing. There aren't quite as many changes to the manufacturing section of the supply chain module as there are in some of the other ones. But the updates, the major updates, is the way that the job card devices report license plates for a finished job, enabling automatic generation of license plate numbers when those jobs are finished, and putting new stop break buttons in. So as a person is doing something, if it's a coffee break time, they can do a pause or a break rather than going through and actually stopping and then restarting a process. Enhanced production floor interfaces. So a lot of organizations will have separate MES, manufacturing execution systems in their organization. And so what they've done is Microsoft has enabled through an API the capability of integrations between existing MES systems, so you don't have to reconfigure everything. So in in the industry 4.0 kind of thing, it's designed to make it faster and easier to integrate supply chain management with common manufacturing execution systems. And so there's a number of them that Microsoft supports out of the box based on an API that's available. And it's just a matter of making sure that whatever MES you're using is available to share information via an API. Planning. As far as the planning features are concerned, there's a number of different features. So we can do parallel firming of planned orders to make life a little bit easier for the planners. There's updates for master planning, so we can have a visualization now so that we can actually visually see what's happening in master planning, as well as auto firming for planned optimizations and a better forecast model for demand forecasts. As you may remember, the demand forecast engine, the master planning engine, was pulled out of F&O and brought into a separate application that runs in Azure. And the whole goal behind that was to speed up the execution of master planning so that you could identify and generate all the purchase orders and purchase requisitions faster to make all those purchases and keep your inventory up to date. There's 3 planning optimization tools or updates that are also been completed in here. The first one is support for capability-based resource allocation. And really what this is when you're looking at productions and you have a scheduled production order, This gives you flexibility to reduce resource identification or increase resource utilization and selection through the production scheduling based on operational capabilities and requirements of an individual. So when you're processing and creating a piece of equipment, or you need to build something, depending upon how many resources are required, you may need to know what their existing schedule looks like, and so you can have that capability-based resource allocation available to you. So, if you need a plumber on the project or whatever, then you can make sure that they actually have sufficient available time to allocate to that production run. Also, we can have production or planning optimization for reorder margin and issue margins. And what this is going to do is speed up and better utilize lead time setup for simplifying both distribution and production. So when you have an individual company that does an order to deliver, you can set this margin up so that when they come back and reorder it again in 6 months or a year, you don't have to go through the whole production process again. You can just issue a reorder, figure out what the margins are, and then issue that for a production run, and then generate the values from a financial point of view so that the production is efficient and makes you money, which is obviously the whole point. And then lastly is the planning optimization support for priority-based planning. Again, if you have companies or customers that will order stuff on a priority basis, so that when they place their order, it will come in faster than everybody else's orders, and everybody else is basically put on hold. What this is doing is it's prioritizing replenishment orders to ensure that any urgent demand plans have the appropriate resources available over less important demand items that are being produced. So this enables you to increase service levels, reduce the inventory levels, but also prioritize the usage of the supplies and available materials for those priority-based planned items versus anything that's not priority-based. And the last section that Microsoft has a couple of things in is the product information management. Again, there's lots of little bug fixes and little features that have been updated here, but the two big ones are shared product information across legal entity boundaries. Right now, it's just been put into public preview, but in the systems as we speak, there's no visibility across legal entities for product information about them. You have to go to each legal entity to see the information about it, which means that you have to enter it into each one. So if you have a large company that has several legal entities, it's nice now because the feature will let you share released product data across the legal entities, reducing the overall volume of data that has to be maintained, and simplify the task of maintaining product master data. So this is a really big improvement and big advance that is going to make a lot of production people and information PIM people very happy, because it will reduce the overall amount of manual work that they'll have to complete, as well as potentially having to do extractions and importing of data through data packages as well. So this should make life a lot easier for the people that do the PIM stuff. And lastly, but not least, the last update is updates for the general release of product information management. And there's some little ones, including things like navigations of the BOM. Navigating through BOM lines in the BOM version page was a bit of a pain before, and they've sort of cleaned that up, so they've made some fixes to that. You can specify strict validation on default order quantities, and so you'll apply validation to the default order quantities, and stricter validation will be applied, allowing you to have standard order quantity, but multiply it over the appropriate number of purchase orders, inventories, and that sort of thing. There's a country of origin management feature that's been updated. This is important for anybody in North America because they recently renegotiated the North American Free Trade Agreement, and I can't remember what the hell they call it now. And anyways, the reason that this is important is because you pay duties and taxes on items that are not produced in either Canada, US, or Mexico. And I don't know, who knows what's going to happen with the whole Brexit thing, but there might be a point in time where that will impact North America or European deployments as well, but who knows. And then there's also some updates for hazardous materials when you're shipping hazardous materials around, so some better documentation and product information updates that have been put into there as well. So it's cleaned up some of the some of the issues and lack of information that was included in the previous version. And that, in a very short period of time, actually I stuck to 20 minutes, I did pretty good. That is all of the updates that are in the Wave 1 release for supply chain.
Thank you so much, Brent. That was amazing. Thank you very much. That was really, really good. Thank you so much. I hope you have a wonderful evening, and thank you for being able to come on tonight.
No worries. I'll see you again soon.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. So with that, we're now going to jump over to Mizelle, who is going to cover off the improvements or what's on the plan for D365 Finance. Take it away, my dear. Oh. Okay, maybe not. Maybe not. Mizelle, are you here?
I am.
Oh, cool. Sorry, I thought for a second you had lost a connection.
No, I did actually. I did. And I was just like,
okay, my dear, take it away. You have
apologies.
permission to present?
Yes, I should. I don't know if you guys can see my screen.
Yep, we're good.
Yeah. I mean, I just to set the scene here, F&O is not got as much as what we've just seen Brett show to everyone. And he's done a fantastic job with that detail. So my one is probably not as detailed, and I don't think we've got as many features coming in, but we do have some exciting ones coming in. So let's take it away and talk about it. So what we've got coming in finance is subscription billing. This one is really a big one. I don't know if any of you have been have come across clients who've had, this complex requirement about recurring subscriptions and how the system can handle it. And we've generally gone down the route of, use projects and use, different modules, but they just isn't something that would do the whole end to end. So now what's coming this time is a more comprehensive solution around this, which will really handle all the complex billing. So you think of it, many of these will have milestone billings and lots of contract management, and just even from the revenue recognition perspective, it just handles the whole suite. So this one is definitely one to look out for. And I personally am excited. My current engagement's got something similar to this, which I think will definitely be beneficial for them. And at least people are not having to go alternative routes with a partial, semi-partial fit. So that's a good one to look out for. Then we've also got this one here, which I think if you've had challenges around reporting and how do you extract data, we have something, and I think a lot of finance people definitely appreciate this, which gives them an analytical insight into their financial and operational data. And it says that you could use your preferred tool, whether it's Excel. This provides this data.
Can I just confirm, is it just me that's lost internet and sound?
Me too. I've lost.
You too?
Yeah, me too. Well,
Yeah.
I can hear everybody except Mizelle.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, well, we're bound to get some technical difficulties eventually, hey? Right. Mizelle, my dear, you still around, or have we lost you? Okay, Kayla, are you here? Maybe we'll jump to doing your bit and then we'll come back to finance.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah? Fantastic.
Hello. Right, do you want to go through to the slides? Oh, it was Mizelle presenting, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, 2 seconds. There we go. Right.
What else are they doing? Very aptly titled.
Right. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Yep.
There we go. Right. So, hello.
Hello.
Long time no see, lovely people. Apologies on behalf of Ms. L because we've all got technical difficulties and all that. So I have been put on the hook for cross-app capabilities, and we're including in this in HR because, hey, what app is HR in? We don't know. In cross-app, it ultimately means, if I was going to describe it, anything that is to do with ERP as a whole, ERP linking with Dataverse, ERP linking with Azure. So it tends to always have a little bit of a techie swing to it-ish. But there's a couple of interesting things in here. So if you don't ever look in the roadmap for these, you probably should keep an eye on them because it's where they put some important stuff, like this first one. Since they went to one version and the auto updates and everything like that, they did warn us that they were going to, after 12 months, start forcing features on us. And it's only recently now coming to fruition. It's only really now properly coming into force. And I don't know if anyone has tried to take the 2025 version, but one of my projects did, and it broke everything. So then I tried to sort that out. This next version, this next wave, the next release is a big release. It's very impactful. One of the reasons for that is because they've switched on, I think it's like 10 features that have been around for a while. We've all been ignoring, nothing particularly interesting, shall we say, but all there, that's a dependency on all of the other features that have been backlogged since then. Also, some of that is because of the HR migration. And shock horror, the HR migration is a little bit delayed. You know, they wanted everything to be available and ready for April. Then they said, oh no, it will maybe be sort of March, June time. Well, now it's even worse. The migration tool, they've decided to split when it's available. And ultimately, the migration tool isn't going to be available now until December. I mean, if they're already saying November or December, it means it's already December. This is ironic, seems in some of the documentation, they are still trying to suggest they will have all clients off the legacy HR app by December. Interesting thought. The point that the migration tool comes available, you do commercially have 12 months to get your customers migrated. The ironic thing and things to watch out for is that migration tool is if you have finance and operations, which you're using as well. So if you have HR and finance, the migration tool isn't expected to be in GA for you to use until December. If you just use HR and you don't use the operations half, which, let's be honest, is probably about 2% of Microsoft's current HR base, then that's available from September, they predict. Because that means you're going from a completely empty operations instance. So it's easier because you're not having to merge data. You're only having to ultimately do a data migration. One of the big problems that we have still, and I have a client really in the middle of trying to say, actually, we want HR, is that even if you try and do a HR MVP, you can't really until leave and absence and benefits management is available. Now, anyone who's on the private preview of HR, they will know that it's really seeming to be quite buggy at the minute. Worse than that, the leave and absence stuff is now not going to be predicted to be coming in GA until July. So any client that chooses to try and go live with HR this year, you're sort of between a rock and a hard place, because unless you're really at the tail end of this year, you have to have a very basic HR module implementation without benefits management, without leave and absence. And that means you then have to pay probably, 10K to do a migration at a later date, because just because Microsoft sends a migration tool, it doesn't mean it's going to be free to do. And it's, or you just go live on the app and you acknowledge you're going to have to spend that money anyway, but you're going live on ultimately a burning platform. And there's no real answer to that. And what does make things substantially worse is the dual right integrations into Dataverse, which, you know, most people who use HR, they use it with the apps, they use it with Power Platform to enhance the capability. The dual right and data flows, which apparently is what the most of the issues is relating to getting all of this live, it won't be around until at least September now. So that's really difficult for everyone involved that are on HR as well, considering HR has only been put live for customers where they've fixed the gaps and plugged the holes with the Power Platform. So all in all, HR still a little bit of a complication for Microsoft. Maybe by April next year will be fixed. I don't know. But yeah, that's one to watch out for. Another thing to talk about is in the release guide, they're calling it about RSAT and significant improvements in how RSAT works. Anyone who uses it today will know that you do your task recordings in Dynamics 365 for operations. You save it to the business process library. The business process library populates Azure DevOps. So if you do have RSAT and if you do use it today, that's how you'll get your task recordings from one to the other. Microsoft are actually selling this as as you know, rebadging it away from what it really is. They are deprecating LCS as a whole. They are moving all of the capability you need to manage finance environments and go live into the Power Platform Admin Center ultimately. The only problem is they can't get rid of LCS because of how critical RSAT is within one version. They can't take that capability away from their customers. Business process modeler, they don't really care. Not many people use it, but RSAT, loads of people do. And the people that use a business process modeler is because they use RSAT. So what this is actually doing is this is investment in Microsoft getting a direct integration between the finance and operations environments and dual right. So what this means is when you are in the RSAT tool, which you install in your Dynamics and operations environment, that actually can then create your test suites, your test cases directly in the Azure DevOps without you having to go anywhere near anything else. And they're also increasing the functionality, so you can have variances of test cases, so you can have sort of clauses to say, if this happens, do this, if this happens, do that, rather than constantly doing new test cases for different things. The general investment in RSAT is brilliant because it's a brilliant tool that we're not using enough because it can be a bit clunky. The rebadging, ultimately trying to get rid of LCS, which was supposed to happen also last year, which is, you know, another piece of legacy AX7 sort of hardware, they're still struggling to get rid of it. So it's one to be careful and one to watch as well, and one we need to make sure actually works before they do decide to just switch off LCS and say gun-ho with it. Another one that's complicated, you'll all be bored of us talking about, is Azure Data Lake. This one has been on the roadmap as for a release pretty much from what I can now remember. I think it's 3 years straight. Every wave we've had Data Lake on there as either coming or in preview or being released. It's just now they've gave up in saying Azure Data Lake in itself is just always going to be on there because they're always adding and creating new features. But that's unsurprising because it can be an incredibly cool tool and it will be critical for reporting. This new version that's coming and the new extension that's coming, ultimately it's more to do with security than anything else. So it's saying instead of shipping entire entities, what actually it can do is you can choose within those entities which data you do or don't want to send. That means you can send data that you didn't used to be able to send, which is with really long-winded heavy GUIDs and things like that, which is great for people who are doing more technical reports, should I say, and also excluding data. So we all know there's a massive push in public sector to start using Dynamics 365. They love it. They love Azure, all like that. But there are a number of companies that are using this system that have highly sensitive data. They don't want to take that out of Dynamics. They don't want to take that to pass infrastructure. They don't want to risk that being reported on by someone in the corner of the business that they don't have access to it. So it makes sense. It's a great evolution, and hopefully just another way to make the Azure Data Lake more pragmatic. But yeah, it's getting there. Would I still switch it on all of my customers on default? Not quite yet. Azure Synapse is actually new. It's been around pretty much for, I think, 18 months now. For anyone who doesn't know, ultimately it's an extension on, so Azure Data Lake is literally just your data dump, your data repository, but dirt cheap. Azure Synapse can go on top of it to help you build ultimately your cubes, your intelligence that sits on it so you can create your reports. The interesting thing what they've done is now they've got standard models in Azure Synapse that understands the data not only from the CE but also ERP solutions, and have merged them together. So a little bit like what they did in Dataverse. And this means that natively all of that data, once you get it into the data lake, can be sucked up by Azure Synapse and enable you to do reporting like this. You know, you're no longer having to build it. And it's interesting, it just shows the trend they're seeing, because they have made specific awareness to call out this is C and ERP data sets. So let's be honest and let's be quite clear here. In Dataverse, we have the data for C and ERP managing now to start working together. In Azure, we have the data for CE and ERP managing to work together. This means it, to be honest, is probably only a matter of time before they start really forcing these two infrastructures together in a way that we don't have to touch anything, which is a problem in some cases, which we've mentioned before when it comes to different types of customers from the front and back office, that they're usually okay to work differently. But from a one platform concept, it's brilliant. So, you know, there's a lot in here. All of it is a little bit good and a little bit bad. But just keep an eye on it. Like I said, this cross-app capability actually it's probably where you're going to find the most problems that you're going to come up against. So yeah, there you go. Keep an eye on it. Have we got Mizelle back?
Yes, hello. I'm so sorry, guys. I'm even thinking if I turn on my camera, my connection is not great at all. So I'm actually using my mobile, which hopefully will do the job. So just to be on the safe side, let me turn off my camera, but just to say apologies, and I'll start sharing my screen. I don't know, are you taking questions, Kayla? Are there anything for you, or do I just go on?
I don't know if anyone has any questions. If not, we'll go back to Mizelle.
Okay.
There you go. You rock on, Mizelle.
Righty then. Okay. So where did I stop? I think I stopped at the point I was talking about the analytics insight, and as I said, I think that's a win for reporting, because at least we've got something that we can get that data model and, you know, do a couple of things around it. That's on the analytics insight. Then another feature that's coming, which I'm really excited to see this, because this has always been, you know, we use third-party tools just to do anything around automating the reading and recognition of vendor invoices. So something is coming along these lines, which will provide the OCR capabilities to complete, you know, that whole full end-to-end AP process. So I'm really intrigued to see what they will have, because you probably use, you know, ISVs or third-party tools or something like that for this process. But it's kind of exciting to really see that Microsoft is now finally putting something in that has always been like, oh, well, you can do this, but we still don't have anything that does the reading and recognition of vendor invoices. So I'm really excited to see this one, and it will be interesting to see, does it have all the capabilities in terms of, I mean, they do say that it's going to have the AI builder and the Azure form recognizer. So I guess there will be that whole intuitive like user experience, as well as that continuous learning of invoices. I mean, I've seen a couple where some ISVs that have extended theirs to deal with exceptions. So it'll be interesting to see what they bring around this space. So definitely a good one to watch out for. Then we've got ones around localization. I mean, many of you in your implementations, you probably deal with a lot of customers who will be like, yes, we've got this compliance requirement, we've got this localization. So there's a whole lot of drive in this release, I think, of trying to meet those more complex business country specific scenarios. You know, we got the tax, you know, the tax engine just before Christmas, right? And now there's more to it, and that's really exciting. I mean, when you look at it from they are bringing in, they're releasing a globalization studio, and this just enhances low-code tax compliance and that global capabilities, and that's just making it a lot more easier for people to bring in these. Whereas before we used to do a whole lot of customization just to come up with these or to meet these, or use, you know, layers and use all sorts of things just to achieve those local requirements. But now they've got a globalization studio, so it's going to be interesting to see what it's able to do. Then in addition to that, they're just also extending all the capabilities that, you know, they've already provided to us around the tax calculation service, as well as the electronic invoicing. So this is just more enhancements, more reporting offerings, and just making that whole product a lot more. I mean, from a tax calculation, maybe some of you might have seen that there's certain things that you can do, or certain elements that you might have to add on to be able to get the calculation. I mean, I've done one where we've brought in a few things into that calculation service. So it'll be interesting to see if they're bringing this in, or they're going to make that process a lot easier, right? And there is also some enhancements to the configuration business documents, as well as electronic report offerings. Not much to say on this one. I guess it's more enhancements, and I guess there is a lot more reporting that we can do that's already in addition to what we've already got in electronic reporting. So that's a plus. We can't complain when they're giving us money. And the last one is there's just this integration for the Russian fixed module to the asset that I had installed, you know, a whole suite of things, and or would we still need to have any other third-party tools? But I guess we've just got to wait and see. But it's exciting that that's what's in store. Any questions with regards to what I've just shared? Seeing if is that a comment for this? Nope. Okay, that's all I've got, guys. I guess I will hand over to the next person.
Thanks very much, Flizelle. So to finish us off, I've left the best for last. Steve is going to go over our business, because you know we've got to involve all our parts. And Steve is our first time speaker here again, so we're really blessed and lucky to have him with us. So Steve, what's going to happen with Business Central this year? Or this quarter, half.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, I mean you're very kind. I you reserve judgment on that kind of statement till I'm done. No. But thanks for having me, everyone. You know, I'm kind of keen to represent the BC community. So nice to be on the call. I will quickly introduce myself. I'm Steve Brooks, CTO at Bamboom Cloud. We're a Business Central partner. We were Partner of the Year 2019, finalist 2020, 2021. And yeah, just like everybody else, I'm going to run through what we kind of see coming up in Business Central. We're quite lucky, really, in one sense on BC. For a long time, when it was kind of when it was Nav, Navision, you know, as people kind of knew it before, we didn't have that many updates. Now I think kind of Microsoft are making up for lost time by kind of mainstreaming it and making it part of D365. We're definitely benefiting from some of that. So we've had, let me see if I can, how's my presentation in Teams going? Not so well. Oh,
I can see you're on slide 14 of 17. And
hopefully 4 or 17. I can see. Yeah.
It says over 500 plus changes in BC since release in 2018.
Perfect. Yeah, great. So yeah, like it says there, we've had 500 changes since Business Central was released. We get these wave 1 and wave 2 like everybody else. But wave 1 2022 has over 50 updates on the roadmap. So what I've done for today is just pick 10 that stand out. There was supposed to be a little bit of kind of scrolling of the stuff that's come before, but clearly my slides haven't quite worked in Teams. But I've just picked the ones that really are the most exciting. There's some quite cool kind of partner focused stuff, a lot of telemetry and kind of back end updates that have come in, certainly in some of these categories that Microsoft have linked. Things like the governance administration, they are useful. A lot of the telemetry stuff will be useful for partners, but ultimately it's not super exciting compared to some of the kind of front end stuff. So let me just move on. I think I have a small delay. Let me just see here. Okay, so the first thing is consolidating customer and vendor balances. Now this is massive for us because we do get a lot of times where the customer is also a supplier. And a couple of screenshots here from a preview build, but small things we've got, like being able to see the balance on a customer card of them as a vendor, and then being able to actually make payments and net those things off so that journals can be posted to kind of take a net off effect across customer and vendor balances. That's going to be a big deal. I know maybe
it's a big deal for FinOps, mate. Don't worry.
exactly that. And with SMB, we've got such small finance teams. Anything that's resulting in kind of administrative savings is massive for us. There's the reporting improvements, and for certain industries where you get that kind of back and forth and that net off, it's a massive difference. So I can see finance teams really loving that. It's a kind of a convenience factor in one sense, but actually from a process point of view for small finance teams, that's going to be a big thing. Second thing here, this feels really small, but actually I think the implications are quite big. It's being able to kind of copy a link from the share menu within Business Central. So we have this link in BC right now so that you can share through to Teams. Tiny little button has been added so that we can copy the link from the share menu. But what that means is instead of having to share a Business Central URL in Teams by just copying it out of your browser, you can click on this copy link, and so when you've got Business Central nested in something else, so like it's nested in Teams as a tab or anywhere where you can't see the URL directly, you can now still capture it, paste it in, and then it really unlocks a lot of the potential for sharing these things in Teams and some of the collaboration. And again, a lot of what we're seeing in Business Central from Microsoft's perspective is connectivity into M365. We're in a competitive space with things like QuickBooks and NetSuite and SAP by Design and all the rest of it. So stuff like this where Microsoft are really leveraging the connection into the other bits of the stack are exciting for end users. Third thing here, context-aware help. Now this does benefit partners as well as end users, but you can see the screenshots. Top one is kind of what you see now. Second one is what you'll see in the preview version and wave 1. I've said here, what does it do? It gives help to end users based on what they're actually looking at. This feels like something that we should have always been able to do, but actually, I guess because the SaaS platform was new and so on, we didn't have it. But now if a user asks for help and they're on a specific screen, Microsoft has set up the system and kind of created this this new feature for the help to know what they're looking at. Now, it's pretty cool for end users in wave 1, but it also unlocks the door for partners to build out their own help functionality based on either their own per tenant extensions or for ISVs to do it on their solutions. So what I think this eventually means for end users is they get support for the stuff they're looking at. There's a slicker onboarding experience, but also for partners, they can build out their own help and reduce tickets through their own partner channel if they're selling, ISV solutions or deploying their own code. And keep users productive, basically. So there's a double win there from a kind of partner and end user point of view. Shopify connection. I mean, these are in no particular order. I probably should have started with this as a headline, because this is the big thing that Microsoft announced for us at Directions Conference back in sort of October time last year. The reason I guess it's not absolutely top of the list is because we haven't seen a huge amount about it, but there's a massive amount of potential for this. Again, particularly thinking about small businesses. So what this is going to do, a lot of the functionality is possibly available in third-party solutions, possibly a slightly contentious point if you build one of those third-party solutions already. But this is all about exposing pricing, stock availability, all of the functionality that's currently set in Business Central through to an e-commerce platform. By creating a native link to Shopify, again, we're giving a lot more to customers out of the box. We're being able to kind of take an end-to-end process. Certainly we as a partner are seeing a request for e-commerce connectivity through WooCommerce and Shopify more and more. So I'm really excited to see where this one goes. I don't really have anything to show on it because we're really just talking about the art of the possible at the moment, but it will be interesting. And I think more than anything, again, from the BC side, when we're competing with other products that have a huge network of connections into kind of best practice software, the app store that things like Xero has, for example, when we're right down at that SMB level, things like this, I think, give a lot of credibility to where Microsoft are taking the product. So as well as the functionality itself, formal partnerships like this, I think, do demonstrate to customers that there's a big investment in the product. So interested to see where this one goes and if we get any others off the back of it. Bi-directional CRM sync. This one's interesting. I think, again, for the rest of the people that have been on the kind of the Dataverse world, the kind of the rest of D365 already, maybe this isn't so exciting because your products all talk to each other already. But for us, getting Business Central more mainstreamed, having a hook into D365 sales, that is brilliant for us. The standard connector was kind of okay. It worked well if you used it as standard, but in reality, changes to orders made in Business Central, they weren't synchronized back to sales. That changes now. So now we've got a two-way synchronization. And that means that in that kind of real world situation where somebody in operations says, well, actually, we can't make that date, we can make a change in Business Central and have it flush back through into D365 sales. So we're kind of hopefully going to reduce that miscommunication issue that I suppose arises between sales and ops, and getting these two things talking to each other, and ultimately reducing the reliance on developed solutions and being able to use more out of the box. Speaking of out of the box, one of the other changes is better reporting. Now, Business Central has something called account schedules. Not that many people use them for all of their reporting, but they do serve a useful function. But they haven't had much love recently. So there's a big kind of refresh of these, allows more columns, allows more customizations, allows totals, comparisons against budget. It kind of reduces the rigidity of the structure that we have for actually building these in the first place. They've, to be honest, I think to an extent been, if not fully superseded, certainly kind of topped up with things like Jet Reports and obviously Power BI as well. So they're not the only way that we've got to report, which maybe this would have been the case, I guess, sort of 10 years ago or so, but they are still useful. They do serve a purpose. They're great because they're easy to build. They're free. They're standard. They work well. They update all the time. So having a bit of love around these is absolutely a good thing. In terms of things that have had a bit of love, Excel report layouts is very similar. So we've for a long time been able to kind of take Word layouts in Business Central, export them, have end users make change, and then re-import them as a standard template. We can now do the same thing with Excel. So we can take a file, send it out to Excel. You can see on the screenshot here, it says, I can't read my own screenshot. What does it say? Data only. That exports the template, effectively sends out the report structure to Excel. Users can then make changes. They can do things like add charts. They can then do sort of small calculations and then bring that back in for the rest of the team to use. Now, again, it's been interesting. I haven't seen the context from Microsoft about why they're doing so many changes to the inbuilt reporting. Sometimes these changes lay the groundwork for something more exciting later on, but it's been interesting to see changes to account schedules, interesting to see changes to Excel reports. I'm thinking around what that might mean for things like Wave 2 further down the line, because it has been a long time since Business Central have got many changes on reports, because there's always been a big focus on things like Power BI and the connectivity there. So moving on, Dataverse change events. Now, again, I feel like the kind of the jealous one in the room, because we're in Business Central not hooked into Dataverse in quite the same way as the rest of D365, but to their credit, Microsoft have made some good steps in that direction, and this is another one. So the virtual tables that we're able to kind of bring into BC have been good, but they're kind of at like proof of concept stage at the moment, because if you download, let's say, customers from Business Central and create it as a virtual table in Dataverse, there's no events off the back of it. So it's pretty difficult to kind of do much with that data. Now that we're having events brought into Dataverse, we can actually do something when a change exists, which again sounds like a small thing, but we're taking a step towards tight integration with Dataverse, tight integration with the rest of D365 by having these put in. So again, it's a bit of a kind of an underlying process change, but by putting this in place, I'll be interested to see what we can do with things like Power Apps and by putting more workflows in to things like Power Automate. So excited to see where this leads. Definitely gives us a lot more potential and stops us just kind of exposing data and then not doing a huge amount with it, which was kind of all we did at the moment. They were very niche, up until now. Number 9 on the list is Teams improvements. Now, I touched on Teams improvements before, and I think the two things go hand in hand with that copy link point that I raised before. Again, when we're looking at very small businesses, a number of our users never really log into Business Central. They just want to see reporting, or they just want to kind of keep the operations processes moving on. By pasting these URLs into Teams and being able to share directly from Business Central into Teams, we can actually interpret the URL and display key information about it. You'll see in the screenshot here, there's a little kind of button that says details and then pop out. The pop out button is going away completely. The details is getting a lot more feature rich, and ultimately you will be able to do a lot more of your kind of business processes by saying things like, hey, look, we've got 15 of this desk in stock, like the screenshot shows here. Are we okay to ship 10 out and hold 5 back for that customer that just rang? We get a lot of informal business processes happening in small businesses that don't necessarily rely on reservations and detailed planning and things like that. A lot of it is done, almost on the fly. This helps those senior people just kind of check in with the rest of their team and say, yes, that's fine, without leaving, the environment that they're used to working in. And then finally, Outlook attachments into Business Central, again, building on that link into M365. So there's already an Outlook to BC integration. We can track things like contracts and deliver sales quotes and things like that. This was one of the very early things that Microsoft brought in the SaaS version of BC, and sort of sung the praises of getting everything connected. It works pretty well, but having attachments being able to kind of take them from Outlook into Business Central, again, makes it more usable in a real world situation where a customer says, can I have 50 of these? Here's my drawing. Or when somebody says, I suppose it's a bit like tracking things through Dynamics 365 sales. We can actually track these through and the attachments go with it. So they're there in the record in Business Central and they can be downloaded. We don't have that right now. I know it exists in things like Dynamics 365 sales, but now it does in Business Central as well. And I think that will make a big difference, again, for small businesses that are doing a lot of business from their inbox. So it's another big one for us, and another thing I think that will help separate Business Central from kind of competitor products and software that says it talks to Outlook, but doesn't really. So that's it. Like I said, there's 50 odd changes on here, so it's all there on the roadmap. I haven't really focused on the telemetry and partner-led things, but there are some interesting aspects to that as well. Yeah, they're my top 10. So thank you very much.
No, thank you, Steve. I'm always jealous, I must admit, of the BC to Outlook integration. It's why we have not got that in finance and operations yet. I honestly do not know, and it does personally drive me potty. So there's only a little bit of housekeeping to do, and then I think we are all ready. So if I share my screen again. Can you see my screen by any chance?
Yep.
Right. So I know it's a small group, so I won't spend too much time on it. But even for the other speakers, everyone, we want to know what everyone wants to hear, and we want to know what gets people excited. I'll send out through email to everyone that's joined us today the links. Let us know if you want to speak. Let us know. This all will be recorded. It is being recorded. I'll drop it on YouTube probably tomorrow to get that shared around for everyone. So share, remind everyone we're back. When we didn't do promotions very well necessarily this month. So, yep, definitely whoopsie on that one. But more importantly, next month. So we have Nathan talking about the tax service. So this is controversial. Microsoft always said in Dynamics for Finance that if you have a taxable region, it should be a legal entity. Well, the tax service means you can have multiple taxable regions or complex taxing in one legal entity. So they are now going back on something that has existed for over 20 years as a core principle and rule within Dynamics. Whoops. So Nathan's going to try and sort that out. And then there's the financial impact of the landed cost module. This one's going to be an interesting one, totally new functionality that's come from nowhere. So Sabra is going to sort that out. And then at the end of that, we'll just come up with a crazy idea as a Dynamics team of what to do. But that's going to be on the 31st of March. So everyone will soon hear and see about that. But yeah, that's, I suppose, everything for everyone, really. Thank you very much for the guys that are still with us. Do you have any questions about all of the content today or any ideas? I feel like in the April event, we need to have a really big, sometimes we do a little bit of a forum if we find a really controversial topic and get specialist speakers in, because we did the BC versus finance before. We've debated field service versus supply chain of where you manage your assets. Any ideas for anything that you think might get people excited, that you want to hear someone talk about? We can pull some people in from Microsoft at all.
Yeah. How many quality updates are we getting per month? We're currently on the 5th one this month.
Well, that is very true. Well, this is what I was saying earlier, wasn't it? The this month's one has broken everyone's world. Yeah, they haven't done very good at that, but yeah. Not
only broken it, but it's actually broken some standard menus, and there's some nice hidden configuration options that have appeared that you have to enable to stop some of the error messages coming up. There's one about shared expenses or something?
I know. Well, this is the thing. Yes, I have been drinking wine, by the way. This is what we do on the user group. Yeah, no, I have a client that was due to start UAT. We took this update because everyone was saying it's a big update. It's going to be the big changes. And it's like, okay, let's take him. Because when you're going into UAT of a client, right, you either take it before UAT or after you go live. You've got no in between. And so we said, okay, let's try it before. The world exploded. Literally, we've had to redeploy environments and everything. Because I don't know if anyone else has noticed, actually, but it is also true. They, on the finance and operations environments, they have actually changed the version of Visual Studio, SQL Server, and Windows on the virtual machines they deploy on tier ones, which means you can't restore a database from one tier one to another anymore. So anyone that's doing any config migration, data migration, that broke all of our environments, literally everything.
Yeah, we got an error message coming up saying you're not authorized to access table shared expense subcategory. And then that actually led us to finding there's a new configuration key which you have to enable for, what is the configuration key? Configuration key was, according to Microsoft Premier support, Expense management. There is now a license. There is now a configuration, a license configuration option.
You know why that is, don't you? It's because they're taking.
Yeah.
Oh, Miss Elle sounds like she's seen that one as well. I bet it's because they're taking the expense functionality out of general and putting it into projects only licensing, because they only do that when they're starting to isolate the licensing. And we know at the minute there's loads of functionality. It's just everywhere, you know.
Yeah, be nice to be warned that they're doing it, though, wouldn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
No. Because the other one was that we started getting error messages saying that IBAN numbers are suddenly not accessible. And I'm not sure whether it's a new duty you have to add saying view sensitive bank information, but that's what puts that back again. But apart from that, yeah, I'm just putting in the 5th quality update this month. There's lots of them.